Our next speaker is Irina Bokova, former Director General of UNESCO. Irina was the Director General of UNESCO from 2009 till 2017, and during her political and diplomatic career in Bulgaria, she served, among others, 2 terms as a member of the National Parliament and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Foreign Affairs ad interim. Please welcome Irina Bokova.
Thank you very much, Sharmin, for this very kind presentation. Monsignor, my dear friend Joël, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here to celebrate. I'm happy to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Peace and Sport, I would say one of the best partners of UNESCO when we speak about sport and peace and sustainable development. And I'm here because I think we all are passionate about sport. Because sport is this vehicle that brings about social inclusion, that brings about peace, mutual understanding, that fights prejudices, that is a vehicle for self-esteem, for a better understanding of the others, for human rights, and for human dignity. And I say this because of my 8 years at the helm of UNESCO, the United Nations agency that is responsible for leading the education agenda, but not only. We work in gender, we work in youth, we work in the intercultural dialogue. And I have noticed by myself visiting many countries, refugee camps, and I'm very happy that Russell is here to share the experience of the agency for refugees. I have seen the power of sport. And sport is not just physical education. Sport, as I said, is about inclusive communities and inclusive societies. Now, when the United Nations were preparing, and we were all working there in partnerships, the Sustainable Development Agenda to the year 2030, unfortunately, sport was not among the goals or the targets. But still, we have an opening. Sport is recognized as an enabler of sustainable development in the preamble of the Agenda 2030. So we have it there. We wish it was more integrated into the 17 goals and 169 targets, but it was not the case. This does not prevent us from working and to seeing how sport contributes to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda, something that Secretary General Antonio Guterres just mentioned. And this is where I think our responsibility of all the partners lies. At least this was the responsibility and still is of UNESCO. Let me just remind you that UNESCO is leading a unique platform of ministers of sports. Some of you are here and some of you have been partners of UNESCO. The MINEPS conferences, the conferences of ministers of sports, they started in 1978. When the first MINEPS conference was held, at that time, the Charter of Physical Education and Sports has been adopted. The second conference, MINEPS conference, established the committee, the CEGEPS, the Committee on Sports and Physical Education. Then we had also created the fourth, a platform for the negotiations on the Anti-Doping Convention. Then we had the Berlin Conference 4 years ago when the Charter was adapted, revised. And this year, in July, we had MINEPS 6, where ministers of sports once again adopted the Kazan Plan of Action. I say all this because we need these large platforms of discussions and debates with ministers, with the sports associations, with the global players, with civil society, with the private sector. We know that nowadays sports has become also big business, but we should never forget that one of the main responsibilities is to make sports accessible. And that is why during these conferences of ministers of sports, the issues that have been discussed, which are in the Kazan Plan of Action, is first and foremost how to make sports accessible, how to integrate it in local communities, how to integrate it in schools, in education systems, how to create the necessary infrastructure, how to make governments, private sector invest in sports, because investing in sports is investing in society, it's investing in communities. Then, of course, the big question is how to, as we say it in our bureaucratic language, mainstream sports, how to look at sports from all the 17 development goals. And we all know that it is so much related to education, to youth engagement, to social inclusion, to health, to achieve the health for all, to health benefits, to inclusive and peaceful societies. And this is where the contribution of this conference is so important. We need, of course, more data. We need more segregated data. We know it's very complex in order to see what are the investments in sports, but we have to be a little bit more elaborate in order to achieve this. And we need, of course, to look at the integrity of sport. All of these three big areas have been profoundly discussed and are integrated in the last Kazan Declaration. When we speak also about sport, and many of these issues have been raised here this morning, we are speaking about human rights, about equality, about anti-discrimination. And we were very proud at UNESCO to enter into partnership with Juventus to publish our report about racial discrimination in sports under the title Color, What Color? And this report helped us provoke and encourage many discussions in different groups, in sports clubs, among civil society groups, to raise the awareness of the media and others around this so important topic. And then, of course, is the big area about peace. We know that peace nowadays is a complex challenge because conflicts are different, because we see conflicts within societies, because we see refugees, and I'm very grateful to Rosella for providing all these good examples of how sports contributes to integrating refugee children and others. But there is another, I would say, global, bigger dimension. Unfortunately, we see that sports practices is declining in everywhere in the world, in developed societies, in developing countries. Children prefer to stay in front of the PlayStations than go to the playgrounds. And this is where we need partnerships. We need first to hold governments accountable. We need also to create platforms for sharing good practices, but we need also to mobilize very strong partnerships, because sport is having a huge impact in Colombia, in refugee camps, in Zatar, in some other parts of the world. I have seen what sports contributes in South Sudan, in the Central African Republic, when we see teams from different backgrounds of young people playing together. But we need also to invest in sports, to look at the infrastructure and to look at the equity, accessibility, and quality of sports. This is also where another aspect so important comes into the picture. It is about women and girls in sports. We all know that, unfortunately, girls are not encouraged, they are not prevented, they are not enabling environments for girls in many settings to be engaged in sports activities. Albeit we have the Brighton Declaration adopted in '94 about women in sports. There were major conferences, gatherings in 2014 in Helsinki. There are champions, there is a special working group that contributes, but still it remains a huge challenge. So I think during this meeting there will be a lot of discussions about women and girls in sports in different settings, formal, informal, and I encourage you to look at this also from the point of view of equity and equality. Because if in the Agenda 2030 the main objective is to leave no one behind. This is where I think sports as a cross-cutting issue, as an issue that cuts all over and covers all the 17 development goals, may play a hugely important role. And last, I do believe we are looking for leadership. We are looking for new partnerships. And I think the new leadership today is partnerships. And I would like to congratulate Peace and Sport, to congratulate for this 10th anniversary, to congratulate for this leadership, and for establishing this wonderful platform. And thank you once again, Monsignor, for supporting this so important global initiative to be the new leadership through this wonderful platform and gathering. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you so much. That was excellent.